Hello everyone, it's me again. I'm here with part 3 of What If Captain America was the main character of the Infinity Saga. We have reached the conclusion at last. So anyways, let's begin, shall we? The first movie in Phase 3 would be X-Men 2, which would be called X-Men The Brotherhood. And as the title suggests, the Brotherhood mutants are obviously the villains. Magneto would recruit Toad, played by Noel Fisher, who was the actor who played him in X-Men Evolution, or even the actor who played him in Days of Future Past. I forgot what his name was. I forgot who he was. Juggernaut, played by Dominic Purcell. Sabretooth, played by Jason Momoa. Mystique, played by someone like Mila Jovovich or Angelina Jolie. I don't know. I think either of them could have done well as Mystique. As well as I think that's all, honestly. Oh, wait. Pyro, played by Dylan O'Brien. Some of the new members would be Colossus, played by John Cena, or the actor who played him in the Deadpool movies. Gambit, played by someone like Channing Tatum, maybe. I would say. Yeah, he would definitely play Gambit, now that I think about it. Rogue, played by Catherine Langford. Bishop, played by Omar Sy, and Emma Frost, played by Jennifer Lawrence. Essentially, it's there would be a love triangle between Scott, Jean, and Emma. Like, I know I've been doing this for a couple of times now, but I just think the Scott, Jean, Emma love triangle storyline makes sense to me, honestly. It honestly makes sense to me. But basically, the film would feature the X-Men facing the Brotherhood, and the film would basically end with, the Brotherhood defeated. However, someone is watching, and that is Mr. Sinister. And the ending would set up Avengers versus X-Men. Speaking of Avengers versus X-Men, the next movie would be Avengers versus X-Men. The plot is similar to Civil War, like I said in my... I know I keep on including the Avengers versus X-Men storyline in some of my MCU reimaginings, but that's because I feel like if the X-Men had been in the MCU sooner than they did, they would have done the Avengers versus X-Men storyline than Civil War. But let's just get back on topic. Apparently, the Avengers would be facing Crossbones, but afterwards they would come into face to face with the X-Men after they would face Pyro. One of the new members of the X-Men would be Iceman, who I could picture being played by Jace Norman, and Angel, who would still be played by the same actor who played him in X-Men Apocalypse. In terms of the villains, there would be Baron Zemo, Bolivar Trask, who would still be played by Peter Dinklage. I think that's pretty much all. Apparently, the X-Men are forced to take the mutant cure, which would be created by Trask, because apparently the X-Men and the Avengers have to work together, but they refuse. The Avengers will be disassembled, and the X-Men will have to take the cure and be powerless. Which is why, Trask creates the cure, but he's also working on a top project known as the Sentinels. Remember the airport fight Apparently, there would be a scene where Black Panther would try to fight Storm, but can't bring himself to face her. Same thing with Spider-Man facing Iceman. He can't bring himself to face Iceman. And apparently, they have to team up to defeat Zemo, who is the one manipulating behind everything, and they would come face to face with Zemo after taking down some Sentinels, and it's revealed that Trask was the one who brought the Sentinels online. Apparently, during the final battle, Jean Grey would die, sacrificing herself to destroy the Sentinels. And during the final battle, this would also kill Baron Zemo and Bolivar Trask. The heroes won, but at the cost of Jean's life. And of course, Colossus was also injured. Apparently, Quicksilver also dies. The movie would basically end with a funeral for Jean and Quicksilver. The Avengers are no more. Scott tries to move on, but has Jean like being his helper. And Magneto even hear the news about the death of his son. And he's left broken. Because he lost his son. But still has his daughter. Though. Next movie is Black Widow. Movie's basically the same, except Yelena would start off as Crimson Widow, and her relationship with Natasha is more closer to Stephen Bucky's relationship. As for General Dreykov, he'd instead be Ermin Zola, who would eventually be killed by Taskmaster during the final battle. Which does lead to a final battle between Taskmaster and Natasha's family. And in the end, Taskmaster is defeated. And we could also remove the after credits scene of Yelena going to Nat's grave. Instead, it can be a setup for Infinity War where Natasha and Steve reflect on the ending of Avengers vs. X-Men. Next movie is Doctor Strange, which is pretty much the same movie if I'm being honest. Next movie is Iron Man 3. The movie is essentially the same, except rather than Tony having PTSD from the first Avengers movie, he has PTSD from Avengers vs. X-Men as he is considering to quit being Iron Man. As for the villains of this film, Trevor Slattery and Aldrich Killian wouldn't be in it. Instead, they would be replaced with Wen Wu and Ezekiel Stane, aka Ironmonger II. Matt Mosk would even replace Maya Henson. And Wen Wu survives, but Ironmonger is dead. He's killed. After, taking the Exterminus to try to be more like his father. And the movie would end with Tony and Pepper getting married. As well. Next movie is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. It's pretty much the same movie, honestly. Next movie is Spider-Man Far From Home. Movie is almost the same with some changes. First of all, everything to deal with the snap will be replaced with the aftermath of Avengers vs. X-Men. No grieving over Iron Man's loss. That would be dropped. Spider-Man wouldn't even have the Iron Spider suit yet. He wouldn't have it in this film, though. and cut up the whole Edith, trying to be like the next Iron Man. That stupid arc is cut completely. Mysterio is still the main villain, but let's not introduce the multiverse here. Instead, Mysterio be more like this. I would picture his backstory here being a mix of his MCU counterpart with Electro's backstory from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. In terms of his MCU counterpart, it's just the same, except Norman Osborn would replace Tony Stark in it, and apparently this means one thing. Beck was fired by Osborn, not Stark, and Mysterio was even looked upon by everyone and mistreated him. He tried to be a magician, but his tricks were often met with backlash, and he was often ridiculed. And so he had enough and then decided to create a suit that would make people suffer their worst fears. But in the case of the Osborn family and Spider-Man, it's different. It's not that he wants to kill Spider-Man. He wants to get revenge on Norman Osborn by killing him. He even tries to kill Gwen Stacy because at some point he kidnaps Gwen and holds her hostage. Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. would also be taken out as they would be replaced with the Hardy family. Walter Hardy would be played by James Remmer, and Black Cat would be played by Sydney Sweeney. During the midpoint of the film, Walter is killed by Mysterio, and Spider-Man nearly kills Mysterio, but Mysterio gets away. That whole scene with Peter and Happy, yeah, that would instead be Peter and Black Cat trying to get over the process of Walter Hardy's death. At some point in the movie, during the final battle, Mysterio nearly kills Gwen by dropping her, but Gwen is saved by Black Cat, as well as Harry, who would shoot Mysterio in the leg, which gives Spider-Man enough time. I say Harry shoots Mysterio in the leg because we would see more of the progression of his storyline, how he wants to step out of his father's shadow to now him wanting to end his father's legacy forever. And he would see Mysterio as an extension of that legacy, since Green Goblin was involved in Mysterio's backstory. In the end, Mysterio is defeated, but because Spider-Man nearly killed Mysterio, Peter just takes a break from being Spider-Man. The after-credit scene would not be the whole Spider-Man's real name is Peter Parker. That whole thing would be dropped and would show Mysterio in jail. And then it would show someone with a gun and then shooting Mysterio in the head, killing him. Side note, he would also be in prison with the side villain, which would be, I'd say, someone like Luthor, or maybe even, I guess, the Chameleon. But now, another after credit scene would even set up the Green Goblin, as Norman would get, the Goblin serum injected into him and goes mad. Next movie is Thor Ragnarok. Movie is basically the same, except Enchantress would return in this film, and during the final battle, she tries to stop Surtur, but when she kills Surtur, Surtur's spirit possesses her, and she faces Hela, and then they kill each other. Or more likely, the Hela possessed Surtur kills Hela, and then destroys Asgard, which in the process kills her, essentially committing suicide in a way. Next movie is Black Panther. Movie's the same except Storm would replace Nakia, which was something I had originally considered for my what if the MCU had all the rights to their characters from the beginning series. But other than that, it's just basically the same movie. Next movie is Avengers Infinity War. Movie's basically the same except when Peter becomes Spider-Man again, he hasn't been Spider-Man in a month, so he becomes Spider-Man again. He has a new friend named Ned Leeds, who Harry resents. And Ned can be like the person that pushes Peter to become Spider-Man again, or maybe even Felicia. I have no idea who that would be. But Spider-Man would get the Iron Spider suit in this film. And the X-Men would also appear. And of course, Cyclops is trying to get over Jean's death still. And during the final battle, Thanos wins and half of the X-Men gets napped. Like, the movie is mostly the same. Next movie is Ant-Man and the Wasp Aim Attack. Like I said, with a lot of the others, it would basically be Nano V Movies' pitch for Ant-Man 3. With one difference. Cassie becomes Stature in this film. And she and Henry Jr. are trying to become heroes like, Scott, Hank, and Janet. Ghost even returns as like a side villain to MODOK as well as Crossfire, who would be played by Walton Goggins. Apparently, at the end credits scene of, Ant-Man and the Wasp would come here as well. Next movie is X-Men Dark Phoenix. The film would take place in between Infinity War and Endgame, and Jean is brought back from the dead by the Hellfire Club, which would consist of Sebastian Shaw, Riptide, Azazel, Pyro, Emma Frost, and her sister. And essentially, this would see the climax to the Scott, Jean, Emma love triangle storyline. Essentially, members like Iceman and Emma would die. Iceman would die during the midpoint of the film. And of course, Emma would sacrifice herself to contain the Phoenix Force once the Phoenix Force, kind of like destroys the Hellfire Club's mansion, which would also kill the Hellfire Club. And in the end, Jean and Scott are back together. In terms of new members, they'd be Morph, played by Derek Mears, and Cannonball, played by Sam Claflin. Even Caleb Landry Jones as Banshee. Next movie is Avengers Game. No, not yet. Next movie is Captain Marvel. Movie is basically the same, except it's set in the present day in between Infinity War and Endgame, and Rogue would replace Nick Fury. But remember that one scene where the cat scratches Nick Fury's eye? Yeah, the cat wouldn't even scratch Rogue. I mean, it could, but I don't care what happens. Next movie is Avengers Endgame. There. Sorry, I made a bit of a mistake, but Endgame's mostly the same movie, except Hank and Angel would die during the final battle. And of course, instead of Iron Man being the one to make the sacrifice, it would be Captain America for obvious reasons. The Soul Stone delete scene would also be added, except it'd be Cap seeing, Peggy again. Tony would retire to be with Happy, Morgan, and Pepper, whereas the X-Men, they'd all be at the wedding of T'Challa and Storm. Even T'Challa's family. But the rest of the ending could also remain the same. However, it would set up the next film with Bucky and Sam looking at Cap's shield and looking at each other. Next movie is Captain America Legacy. The film would take elements from Brave New World and Falcon the Winter Soldier, but the plot's a little more closer to Falcon the Winter Soldier. Throughout most of the movie, Sam and Bucky argue over who should the next Captain America be. As for the villains, they would be the Serpent Society instead of the Flag Smashers. In the end, Bucky would become the new Captain America facing King Cobra. And in the end, Bucky becomes a new Captain America that's nothing like Steve. Nothing like Steve whatsoever. Next movie is Spider-Man No Way Home. Doctor Strange would not be in it. A lot of the multiverse stuff, that's gone. Green Goblin would remain the main villain, though. But he would have another villain at his side, which would be Scorpion. Aunt May still dies, though. That part wouldn't change. We see more of the relationship of Spider-Man Black Hat grow, and we see the fractures of Peter's relationship with MJ, Harry, and Ned. No, not Ned, but Gwen. Because during the final battle, when Spider-Man is facing Green Goblin, Green Goblin almost kills Gwen like in the comics, but Gwen survives because, well, Harry catches her. Harry would see Spider-Man fighting Green Goblin, who now has his mask on, and Harry then figures out that the Green Goblin is his father, because early in the film there would be a subplot where Harry is trying to figure out who is the Green Goblin and how he could be connected to his father. And then he figures it out in the end. Essentially, Harry begins to walk down from, like the Statue of Liberty which now has a Captain America's shield in his memorial. Green Goblin has, Black Cat and Spider-Man taken down. Essentially, he nearly kills Spider-Man, but then a gunshot is heard. And then Norman's body collapses to the ground. That's right. Harry has just killed Norman Osborn, his father. And then Harry would take the goblin mask and put it on. Yes, Harry's arc is now complete. He has stepped out of his father's shadow and has become his own person, separate from his father. He's become more like a villain that's nothing like his father. And then Harry would even take the glider and leaves. Scorpion, however, would be arrested. Peter and MJ break up because she blames Spider-Man for not stopping Harry from killing his father, and this could also be the scene where she discovers that Peter is Spider-Man. In the end, Peter he's in his new Spider-Man suit, reflecting on the events of the previous movies. Feeling like, it was kind of his fault that Harry became a villain like his father and tried to stop him, but failed. However, Black Cat shows up and it's revealed that Felicia is pregnant with Peter's child. And there would be an after credits scene about news reports going over Norman Osborn's death and how turns out he's the Green Goblin, and Oscorp is now was burned. Oscorp was destroyed, essentially. And the lead suspect to a lot of this is Harry, who was last seen when his father was killed and Oscorp was being burned down. Gwen is watching the news and is horrified about what could have happened to Harry. But speaking of Harry, someone is watching the news and then throws a pumpkin bomb at the TV. And out from the shadows comes a man in a suit similar to the Green Goblin, but now it's more silver with orange and blue accents, even with an orange cape. And that, of course, has one more detail, that the mask is yellow. And you all have guessed it right. That is Hobgoblin. Harry is now the Hobgoblin, because him becoming the Hobgoblin means many things. One, he has successfully erased his father's legacy forever. Two, he is now a villain that's nothing like Norman. And three, this ends the Green Goblin legacy forever. The Hobgoblin is born, and that he's a villain who is nothing like the Green Goblin. Nothing like the Green Goblin at all whatsoever. And it's a more personal threat because this was Spider-Man's friend who just became a villain like his father. So that's basically what if Captain America was the main character of the Infinity Saga. I think if more films were to be made, there's probably not much to say, but Brand New Day could very well be, the Spider-Man versus Hobgoblin movie. Or they could still focus that on what we're gonna get and have it be like, Spider-Man having to face with, being a father now. But you could still focus on him facing the Hobgoblin, aka Harry, and whoever the other villain would be. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed the finale to what Captain America is the main character of the Infinity Saga. Anyways, I'll see you all later.